Welcome back everyone, Brian here. Thank you again for tuning in to the Visvim Pioneer channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Contrary Dept release from 2022. So the release in question is going to be the 7-hole 73 folk boot in the dark brown colorway. I purchased the 7-hole boot along with the decoy duck boot in November 2022 at Visvim Exposition. The 7-hole boot was a part of a larger collection released under the Contrary Dept at select retailers worldwide. However, I believe that this boot was a Black Friday release and sold exclusively at Visvim stores here in the US. So this boot is inspired by jungle boots from the 70s as referenced by the name, and there's a lot of cool interesting materials and construction going on that we should definitely take a look at. So the 2022 release of the 7-hole boot has some of the hallmark features from previous iterations, but it has upgraded and updated materials being used on the upper. To many, this is probably the best iteration of the boot. To others, the pair from 2013 that John Mayer frequently wears is by far their favorite. Regardless on where you stand, the 7-hole boot is one of those classic Visvim silhouettes that a lot of people are looking to acquire. Taking a closer look at the 7-hole boot from 2022, you can definitely see a lot of different variations when it comes to materials and textures on the upper. The Italian horsehide has been vegetable tan and obviously damage processed to give off a different texture than it normally would. As previously stated, these are inspired by jungle boots, and with that you have some hallmark features such as the venting on the interior of the boot as well as the canvas upper. These boots are made to be water resistant, and the breathability on them is far superior than many of the boots that are in my collection. I personally prefer to wrap the rope laces around the boot. I think it gives off a very authentic look to the time period, and it also secures them a bit more. A common concern with the 7-hole boot is that the sizing can be a little bit off. This is due to the fact that traditional 7-hole boots were used in military applications, and so whenever a soldier was in the field and they stepped in water, their feet would swell, and because of this, the forefoot needed to have a lot more room than a traditional boot. So the outsole is a custom Vibram outsole, similar to the one found on the Virgil, and when comparing them to this Virgil boot, you can see the difference in the width of both boots. These boots do have a Goodyear construction, so the outsole is replaceable when it does get worn out. For those of you that want to learn a little bit more about Contrary Dept, there's a really good dissertation on the Visvim website that I would highly recommend you read. Essentially, the items released under Contrary Dept tend to have a strong focus on military and utility use. The fabrics, the construction, a lot of it is based on items from the past. I would say more than any other Visvim line, the Contrary Dept does strongly focus on workwear. So if the utilitarian workwear aesthetic is something that you're into, I would definitely recommend checking out some of the Contrary Dept items. Unlike the ICT line, the Contrary Dept line relies heavily on greens, olives, browns, and you get a lot more colors in that palette. There's also a lot more use of camouflage patterns, and you'll see it on some of their more popular garments like the Harrier down jacket and a few of the Iris releases from the past. This boot is a perfect example of how Visvim blends the versatility, functionality, and everyday use with an item that can be worn for years to come. If you have any questions on this particular item or anything that you've seen on the channel, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll make sure to respond to you all. With that being said, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, thank you for tuning in. Peace.